Welcome to the Balanced Black Girl podcast. We're putting Black girl magic in motion. This show is dedicated to reinventing wellness for women of color. I'm your host, Lestrandra Alfred.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Balanced Black Girl podcast. I am so happy to have you here. If you are a new listener, welcome to the show. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. So I have recently been partaking in a lot of events, a lot of wellness events, business events, networking events, and something that's really cool that's starting to happen is that when I tell people about Balanced Black Girl or I tell people what I do, I'm beginning to meet people who have learned about the show or who have had friends that tell them that they need to tune in or have just seen it pop up and are curious about it. And that to me blows my mind. It is the most flattering, incredible thing, especially when people say that the show has been shared with them by a friend. So if you have ever tuned into the show and shared it with a friend who you thought would enjoy it, thank you so much. It is a huge help. We have really helped grow this community from all of you listening, rating, reviewing, and sharing with your friends. And that is honestly the number one thing that is so key to supporting the show. So thank you so much. And speaking of ratings and reviews, let's get into the review of the week. So this week's review is titled Seeking My Best Life. It says, I've been listening to this podcast for a couple of months now, and I find myself looking forward to the next episode. The content is always relevant and on point. It doesn't matter which one I listen to, I always walk away with some nugget that I can include in my life to help me be my own true self. Something that I'm learning now. The other day, I was listening to Healthy Living in the Bronx, and the content was so real and relatable that my 10-year-old was also into it and had questions for us to process. It's important that our young Black girls have strong Black women that are talking about self-love, our bodies, owning businesses, and living a full life. Les not only has the podcast, but we read along with her, and she does the research on all kinds of things that we could improve the lives of one another. All we have to do is show up for ourselves and each other. Les, thanks for thinking about all of us. Well, thank you for this incredible review. There's so many things there that I'm just so honored to hear. First off, that you listen to the show with your daughter and are able to have discussions with her because, you know, there's a whole nother generation of balanced Black girls coming up that if we can help guide these conversations for them early, can really help break some patterns that I think a lot of us are stuck in. And I'm just so honored to hear that you're sharing the show with your daughter and that it's just opening up new conversations for you. So thank you so much for this rating and review. If you have not yet rated and reviewed Balanced Black Girl podcast on iTunes, please do so. It is a huge help to the show. As I mentioned earlier, sharing the show, rating the show, reviewing the show are the number one things that you can do to help support because that is how people find us. And that's what makes the facilitation and conversations that we talk about here at Balanced Black Girl possible. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so now it's time to jump into today's interview. Our guest is Harmony Tamaalevea, and she is the founder of Literacy Lounge, which is a subscription box that highlights Black literature while promoting reading as a means to a less stressful life. Harmony was diagnosed with lupus at the age of 18, and that has really shaped her outlook on life, her overall health, and her wellness journey, which we talk about quite a bit in this episode. Information, education around lupus if you are not familiar with the disease, and how her diagnosis really helped inspire her to create this incredible company. And if you're familiar with Balanced Black Girl, you know that supporting Black writers is a really big part of what we do. through the Balanced Black Girl Book Club, where we pick books written by Black women authors every other month to read together as a community and meet and discuss for those of us who are in the Seattle area. So we're all about supporting Black literature here at Balanced Black Girl, and this was just such a fun, insightful conversation. Harmony is a young woman who just absolutely blew me away with her just drive and maturity, and I really, really enjoyed talking to her, and I know that you will love this interview as much as I did. So let's jump into the show. Harmony, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. So before we dive in, can you tell us where you're from and a little about your background?
Yes, well, I'm originally from Lawton, Oklahoma. A lot of people might not know where that's even at, but it's a small military town. But currently I live in Oklahoma City. I moved up here for college, and I'm the founder of Literacy Lounge, which is a subscription box that highlights Black literature and promotes reading as a means to a less stressful life.
I love it. I love it. And we're definitely going to talk a lot about Literacy Lounge and what inspired you to start it and the importance of Black literature. But still getting to know you a little bit better, I know that a big part of your story is you really leaning into self-care when you had a difficult experience with a lupus flare-up. So for listeners who may not be familiar with lupus, can you tell us a bit about your experience with it and how that has impacted you?
Yes. Well, lupus is an autoimmune disease, and essentially it doesn't know your good cells from your bad cells. So it attacks everything. And lupus is like, people have different type of lupus.
Yeah.
So for me, I have lupus nephritis. So that means that my lupus attacks my kidneys. So a lot of times, like if I'm having a flare up, then I have symptoms that are showing like kidney failure, or my kidneys aren't functioning the way they should be. They're not holding in or retaining fluid like they should be. But yeah, I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 18. That was 6 years ago. And it's like all the symptoms just kind of hit you at once. And having lupus is almost kind of like having cancer, because it's unpredictable. You don't know when it's going to come, when you're going to go through another flare up or not.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. You were so young when you were diagnosed. So it's been kind of your whole adult life that you've been living with it. Wow.
For sure. I would say like that's, like you said, it's affected my whole adult life. So I think that being diagnosed with lupus is kind of what propelled me into like being so intentional about wellness and health. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Along those same lines, can you tell us about some of the self-care practices that you implemented that have helped you kind of get through those difficult times, maybe where you're having a flare-up or what that's been like?
Yeah, I would say especially like, I'm young, so just like everybody else, I have a lot of things going on. Like I already graduated college, but even, going through college, school, work, all that, you have so much stuff to do. But really just knowing how and when to listen to your body is the most important thing. So that's something that I've had to really focus on, and knowing when to rest, even though I want to do and accomplish so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing when to rest is such an important lesson that I think can be really difficult for a lot of people, especially when you're ambitious and when you have all these things that you want to do. But it's also, there's so much value in when you learn that I can do all of those things, even if I don't do them all right now, and giving your body the rest it needs when it needs it is also so valuable.
Yes, and especially knowing like I can't, even if when I'm trying to accomplish something, I can't be my full self if I'm not rested. I can't do it as my full self if I'm not rested and taking care of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you get the idea to start the Literacy Lounge? And for those listening who are just now learning about the Literacy Lounge, can you tell them how it works?
Yes. So, well, I'll start with the idea. The idea came from actually a flare-up. One thing I like to do, and that kind of really helps me relax during any time in my life, is reading. I've grown up. I was always a reader when I grew up, but I feel like everybody like kind of gets away from that a little bit once you get older and stuff. So it was really during that time where I started to pick up reading again, and this was during my senior year of college. And just through reading and really focusing on self-care practices is kind of where the idea came from of Literacy Lounge.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So how does Literacy Lounge work? Like if someone subscribes to Literacy Lounge, what do they get?
So along with the book each month, of course, the book is written by a Black author because that's something that we're huge on, is highlighting Black literature. So along with the book, you receive 2 to 4 items that either stimulate relaxation, so like a candle, a tea, essential oil, stuff like that, or bookish items like bookmarks, like book lights, poems, different prints, art prints. So
I love that. And I love that the Literacy Lounge focuses on highlighting works from Black authors. Why is it so important to read work by Black authors?
Why is it not so important? That's a real question. But really, it's just all about representation. I think that's the biggest one. Knowing and picking up something that you can actually see yourself in.
Yeah.
Or like reading something and you're like, man, that's exactly how I feel.
Yes.
So I think that's the most important. And I think just highlighting Black culture and bringing awareness to our stories.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that really resonates about that with me is that I got the December box, which was Becoming by Michelle Obama. I think by now everybody knows Becoming. And one of the things that she said about her really wanting to write the book and share her story, and why she encourages so many other people to share their stories, is that when other people don't know things about us, or when there are gaps in our story kind of to the outside world, other people will fill in those gaps and those narratives for us with assumptions that are usually wrong. And when we use our voices to share our stories and to create those narratives, then we know that kind of the right story is getting out there. And I think that that also really resonates with the importance of highlighting Black writers, Black authors, Black artists, and really understanding Black art is having Black people share Black stories in ways that can't be kind of manipulated or misconstrued.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a quote by a Black author. She's like a legend, Audre Lorde. And it says, like, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so good. It's like, and that just goes on to what you were saying, like, we have to tell our own stories, because if we don't, then we're just depending on other people and they might not get it right.
Yeah, exactly. Who are some of your favorite authors?
My favorite, I would say Toni Morrison is definitely one of my favorite.
Yeah,
and she's a classic, of course. I love a lot of like contemporary authors that we've been seeing, like the author of Queenie, Sister Soldier. She's a classic though.
Yeah.
Tiffany Jackson, she's kind of newer too. I like the way that she writes. I can't believe I forgot about Tayari Jones. She wrote An American Marriage. That's like one of my favorite books I've read in recent years.
I feel like that book has become like a contemporary classic.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So how do you pick which books and which products get added to the Literacy Lounge box each month?
See, I try to be very intentional about this. So I read the book of the month prior to like choosing it. So I read it. If I feel like it's something that resonates with me and I feel like other people can resonate with it as well, then that's usually it. That's how I choose it. And then from reading the book, I'll get ideas. So like that's kind of where the bookish item comes in. So like if it's a book that talks about Black Lives Matter, then maybe we'll choose a product that, you know, has that written on it, or like a patch or a pen or something like that. For example, our January book was James Baldwin, If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yes.
And we had pens with James Baldwin quotes on there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I choose the items. And then like we try to include one like self-care, like a candle or tea or and stuff like that.
And what I love about that and what I love about the items and just the whole concept is there is a lot of conversation around self-care that is very appearance driven, and that can be totally fine. Like if getting a facial feels like self-care, that is great. If getting your nails done feels like self-care, that is great. However, I think that there are also a lot of elements of self-care where it's like really taking care of your mind and really taking care of your spirit. And even in your case where you have had times where you've gotten really sick, and self-care is what really keeps your spirits up mentally. The significance of that is a conversation that I just love having a little bit more than like the facials and the nails done.
Right. Which is so true. Like it's really more than the appearances. Like self-care for me could be like taking my medicine on time every day. Like setting up that doctor's appointment I've been trying to avoid. And that could be for a lot of people though.
Yes.
But it's just going to therapy. It's like, I think you're definitely right about people like trying to glamorize it.
Yeah.
You know? But it's just self-care just isn't that simple.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about kind of knowing what you need and how to give yourself what you need, which sometimes can be really hard if people aren't used to maybe listening to themselves, that they don't know how to listen to their body to understand what their body needs, or if they get really scared, kind of quieting down and being with their own thoughts to figure out what their minds and spirits need. It can seem really scary, but it's so valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of how you get to the core of who you are.
Yeah.
As well.
Absolutely. So you co-founded the Literacy Lounge with your partner, Dorian, and like I am blown away at how young you are. Like you're 24. You've created this amazing idea. So for those listening who may be in college or who may be fresh out of college and have an idea for something cool that they want to create, but they're worried they can't execute it or that they're too young to build something, what advice would you give them?
Man, just go for it. Just do it. Like, do it scared. Do it afraid. Do it broke. Like, just do it. I feel like us launching Literacy Lounge was like one of the most freeing things for me, just because I was proud of myself because I actually did it and I wasn't scared to do it.
Yeah. Like,
and of course it's not going to be perfect. Like, we've learned so much along the way. And I think that's just that's just how it's going to be. You're going to learn more lessons along the way. But if you never started, if you never launch, then you're not going to learn anything.
Exactly. I think that is such great advice. So in the future, where do you see the Literacy Lounge going? What are your dreams for it?
Well, we really want to become like a marketplace for Black authors, Black literature, everything. And because we've had like a lot of, like in our books, we mostly promote published authors, and we've had a lot of self-published authors reach out to us. So we've been trying to create a platform for them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then we really want to get into children's books. We've had such a high demand for that. And we hope to also open our own bookstore in OKC one day.
Oh my goodness. Those are all really, really incredible things.
Thank you.
And I think what really strikes me about what you're doing and why I think it's so wonderful and so important is we're all very interconnected all of the time, right? Like we all spend a lot of time on social media. We all spend a lot of time on Instagram and sliding in each other's DMs, but just the simplicity of having a book and feeling grounded with a book and being part of a community to talk about stories and share that is just so powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. It is very powerful. And just taking that time to yourself and, like you said, disconnecting, really unplugging from social media and everything and just sitting down with a book is very helpful.
Oh, for sure. I have had a lot of conversations about kind of, again, expanding that definition of self-care, and an interesting theme that I would love to get your take on this that has come out of a lot of those conversations is looking at conscious consumption as a form of self-care. And looking at the messages that we're taking in and the people whose words we choose to take in. I also think that kind of goes back to the importance of promoting Black writers and Black literature, is if we can maybe spend a little bit less time on those things that are kind of overstimulating us and overwhelming us, and a bit more time just really consuming incredible art, that could also be a form of self-care. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Does that sound ridiculous?
No, I completely agree. I definitely think so. Like, I think you're right, especially like we consume, and that's one thing, like that, what you just said made me think about is like, we consume a lot of like bits and pieces, like quick information or like quick quotes or quick writing or something like that. But when you sit down with the book, you actually get like a full piece of something instead of just a quick, because you just don't know how long it's going to take you to read the book.
Yeah. And the thing that I think is so great about the community aspect of reading, or when you're part of a community that is maybe all reading something together and getting to talk about it, is hearing other people's perspectives of how they interpreted things. Because I feel like when we consume stories, we all kind of consume it a little bit differently, or we hear different parts of it, and getting to connect over the different parts that other people maybe see and pick up on is also part of the fun of it.
Yeah. And also, like, everybody has different experiences, so something I experienced maybe like from a book, I can relate to it more, but something somebody else experienced, they related to something different in the book. So I think it's really cool to see other people's perspectives on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would also love to get kind of your thoughts on physical books versus things like electronic books. You know, with your boxes, you're sending people like physical books. Are you someone who prefers physical books over, say, like a Kindle version or tablet?
For sure. Like, I love physical books. And I feel like audiobooks mainly are cheating. I'm sorry. You're cheating. You're not reading. Okay, you can still do it, but it's not the same. It's not the same as actually reading. You still get good information, and it still might affect you, but it's not the same as reading.
Why do you say that? What's different? What's special about reading?
I think it's just being able, the book is actually in your hand. You can highlight, you can write notes, and you're actually taking the time to sit down and focus. Mm-hmm. But like audiobooks, like most of the time people who play audiobooks, they're driving or cleaning or cooking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Yeah. No,
But
that's great.
I also love physical books because I want to have like a little whole like mini library in my house.
Mm,
And also even for like future, like my family and stuff like that, like my kids seeing like books when they grow up,
yeah.
or having that insight or around them. I think that creates a good space and environment.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I go back and forth. It's like I'm someone who I love physical books and I love reading physical books, but I'm not a rereader. Like once I read something once, I won't ever really do it again. So I try to, my happy medium is to kind of be a bit of a library person, not even because I like don't necessarily want to spend money on a book, but just because I'm like, I don't have the space for it and I know I'm not going to read it again, but I love this like physical, I love the pages.
yeah. I'm not a rereader either. I'm not.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Yeah,
For
totally.
sure.
So do you like writing as well?
That's the thing. Like I love reading so much, but I don't like to write. Like I don't consider myself a writer, or like I don't like journal a lot or anything. But it's something I do want to, like a skill that I want to enhance is writing. So I've been trying to write little book reviews. So
Oh, that's amazing. Have you shared your book reviews?
no, not yet.
Oh,
So
you should if
yeah,
you're comfortable with that.
I will. I will eventually.
Yeah, I think people would really, really love to hear that
Yeah.
for sure. So, Harmony, what does self-care look like for you currently?
Currently, self-care is, that's a good question.
It's hard, especially when you have a business.
Yes. And plus, well, I'm still going through chemo. I'm still going through my treatments.
Mm-hmm.
So I was supposed to have 6 out of 6. So I've already completed that, but my doctor is not sure if she wants to do like 2 more of a different type. So we're kind of like in that waiting period.
Yeah.
So, and for people that don't know, like chemo is a common treatment for people with lupus.
Yeah.
As well, because it suppresses the immune system. So it like calms it down.
Yeah.
Since it's hyperactive.
Yeah. And in doing that, does that make so that your immune system doesn't attack your healthy cells?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happens? Yeah.
Right. So it's just going to bring it down completely.
Yeah.
So
I could imagine that during those times where you are going through chemo and going through those treatments, it's probably definitely going to impact your self-care and what that looks like.
Yeah. So self-care a lot lately has been looking like sleep.
Yeah.
Resting. And when I do have energy, I try to get stuff done, try to get stuff accomplished. But that's why I'm so thankful for Dorian.
Yeah. Because
he works on Literacy Lounge a lot.
Yeah.
And since I've been going through that. But yeah, but rest, sleep, and reading as well.
Yeah.
I'm up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you reading currently?
I just finished Queenie, and then so I'm reading The Mothers.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. So how do you get new books on your radar?
A lot of research.
Yeah.
I look at articles a lot. Bookstagram is a big one.
Yeah.
And then an accomplishment that we just had within the last month or so was we've gotten 3 ladies here in OKC. They work with all publishers, and so they help us get books and like advanced reader copies and stuff like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that.
That's a good plug.
Yes.
That is amazing. I love that. That is something that I now that Balanced Black Girl has kind of a book club component that I have definitely struggled with is being kind of on top of what's upcoming and what's fresh, because I'm always like, I'm never hip to any in any area where I know kind of like the hot up and coming thing. I'm always the last to know, and everything from books to music to clothes, like everything. So I'm always really curious for folks in their industry, like how you stay on top of what's coming next.
Yeah, usually Bookstagram helps a lot too, because they are on it, man. But yeah, I think I love your book pick that you picked.
Eloquent Rage.
Yes, I read that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So good. I like your Facebook page and everything, so I could follow the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I was really excited about that book. It was actually one that one of the women in our Facebook group suggested, and I loved it. I followed Brittany Cooper's work for a while and had that book just on my list of like personal reads, and I don't know why I hadn't considered making it a book club pick, but when she suggested it, I was like, oh, duh, of course. This is perfect. So I've been really loving that book. It's a really good one. But I go back and forth because I feel like I've been reading a lot of nonfiction lately. I haven't read fiction in a while. I did read If Beale Street Could Talk last year, which is just such a beautiful book. But I'm craving some fiction again after this one.
Yeah, see, that's usually how I have to do it too. Like, I read a lot of nonfiction, like Black authors and like business books.
Yep.
So I have to like take a break and be like, okay, I need some fiction in my life.
Yeah. Like, I need a story.
Yeah. But even like the fiction, it can be pretty like impactful. So, or like relate to real life.
Absolutely.
That's what I like about it.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. So if you had to pick one all-time favorite book, which is probably a really hard question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Number one favorite book pick of all time, what would it be?
Oh, all time.
Yeah.
All time. I'm going to have to say An American Marriage.
Yeah.
Because I read that like over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it still like sticks with me.
Yeah.
Like, I still think about that story and the characters and stuff. And I know, like I told you, I'm not a rereader, but I've really been considering about rereading that. So that's how you know I really like it.
Exactly. That's when you know it's good.
That's how you know it's real. So.
Yes. So, Harmony, what does being a balanced Black girl mean to you?
It means taking care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually first before anything else.
The fact that you are like 24 and have such a better grasp of all of these elements than I do now, and certainly than I did at your age, I think is just such an incredible thing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I want to say, like, the Balanced Black, your podcast has really helped me, especially like with the imposter syndrome.
Oh, good.
I could really talk to you about that forever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's talk about imposter syndrome and how real it is, because I create those episodes partially out of stuff that I need to hear too. And I think it can be really, really easy for people to see something like the Literacy Lounge, which is like this incredible idea, and you're putting out this amazing service and it's growing, and that's really cool, and think that you don't deal with imposter syndrome, or to listen to this podcast and think that because I'm talking about it that I don't deal with imposter syndrome, but it's something that we all deal with at some point, right?
And I think a lot of people don't even like, because for a while I didn't even know there was a name for it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think people don't even know, like, it's a real thing, you know? But I even struggled with imposter syndrome, even, like, setting up my interview with you. Yeah, like, I'm like, I can't talk to these people.
But you can.
Yeah, I know I can't, but like that's just, the thoughts of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And even like just from my background, like I know that you had mentioned you're a first generation college student, and so am
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's another thing is just like going against the grain in general and starting a business, not taking the traditional straight out of college route of getting a career and a high paying job and stuff like that. It's a whole nother thing.
Absolutely. It's a matter of defining what success looks like for yourself
Mhm.
and creating those values for yourself and really living by it and sticking with it. And even when something like the imposter syndrome kicks in, everybody experiences it in one way or another. You just can't let it consume you.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like you can't let it take over you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you still have to push through it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can also look at, because I think for a lot of people who are maybe in that situation where maybe they are a first generation college student, or maybe they are really ambitious and they're just so used to pushing and
Mm-hmm.
getting really hard on themselves for things, is to also remember to celebrate all that you've accomplished and all that you have done and all of the odds that may have been stacked up against you and how far you've come against that. Even if your ultimate goal hasn't been reached yet, how much you have done
Yes.
is so incredible, and it can be so easy to lose sight of that.
I definitely agree. It's like you just have to stop and kind of think like, oh well, just focus on the things that you did accomplish. Like even graduating college, that's a whole
Oh my gosh.
accomplishment in itself.
That is a huge accomplishment in and of itself, especially if you are maybe a non-traditional student, if you're someone who had to work full time while you were in school, or if you're someone who you are dealing with a severe autoimmune disease while you're in school, like, and you graduated. That is incredible,
Yeah.
And people forget to kind of cut themselves that slack of just how much they have done when we get so set on these other external goals.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know I'm partially talking to myself too, because I'm the queen of like beating myself up over this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's important to be super proud of yourself.
Yeah, and I think like everybody goes through it. It's just everybody doesn't talk about it.
Exactly. And I think that they should. I think that more people should talk about it
Mhm.
and should talk about kind of the things that we don't see behind highlights and successes and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So Harmony, what is next for you? What do we have to look forward to with the Literacy Lounge? How can we keep in touch with you?
Keep in touch through social media for sure. Instagram, Facebook are our main platforms, and that's Literacy Lounge Box is our @ name for both of those.
Yeah, we will have all of that linked in the show notes. Y'all also have a really great newsletter as well, right?
Yes, we do that once a month near the end of the month. And also visit our website, theliteracylounge.com, and sign up for emails. And then we also offer 15% off your first 1 month subscription. So that's another.
Amazing. Yes, all amazing things. We will have all of that linked in the show notes so that everyone can follow you, so that everyone can subscribe. I know everybody is going to love it. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.